I want to talk about something that doesn't get discussed enough. I want to talk about going to school as the only race slash ethnicity slash minority slash person of color in school, as this is a real humbling experience that doesn't get discussed enough. Now when it comes to me, yeah, I can't relate, as I grew up in northwest London, and if you know the area, you already know what that means. Diversity is normal. You walk down the street and you hear 10 accents. You see every skin tone and every culture blending into everyday life. At school, no one was a minority or the only one of anything. You had friends that looked like the United Nations without anyone trying to make a point about it. It was sort of life at school for me. I can't really relate to the struggle being the only black dude in my school, when 35% of the whole school were black and another 50% were other minorities and ethnicities. So in that case, then what makes you qualified talking about being the only race in a school you dote at? I'm glad you asked so nicely. See, I have a friend. I will not say his name, so I'll be referring to him through his pronoun. Why? He grew up in Essex, and it's a different world entirely over there. From my perspective at least. His school was around 97% white, not 97% diverse with one group slightly bigger. Actually 97% white, and he was pretty much the only black dude in his year for most of his time there. That alone is absolutely hard for me to even fathom. It's like being the black sheep in the literal sense of it all. You can't blend in no matter what you do. All the attention will be on you for all the reasons you don't even want. My friend told me from the very first day, he knew he stood out. Not because someone told him directly, but because the way people reacted when they saw him. They saw the hair, his skin tone, and his looks, and they got curious. Not in a friendly way, but in an abnormal way. He told me that on the first day, two dudes went up to him unprovoked, rubbed his hair without his consent, and asked him the most insane questions like, "Do you comb your hair?" Or, "Why is it so greasy?" Or, "Is that your real hair?" And don't get me started on some of the goofy statements they told him. Okay, they'll make remarks about his hair like, "It's so spongy, dude." Or, "You look like a mushroom." Or, "Wow, it's like wool." He deadass told me that's what they literally said on the first encounter. Oh, and he also told me that they tried to give him unsolicited advice about his own hair. Like, "Bro, you should get waves." And, "You should grow an afro, dude." And I was out here thinking, they're only giving him that advice so they could just slap his head or throw pencils on his hair for fun and laughs. Farmer, what makes them qualified to be giving him advice on hair they don't even have? That's like having Barry the football hooligan trying to order a pint in a barbershop in Peckham. It just doesn't even make any sense. Then after a short while, my man told me that they were asking for N-word passes all the time. Like they would literally beg him for N-word passes. Every single time. What's this obsession with the word anyways? It's like they have a fetish for saying the N-word. Like it's actually so weird. He would tell me some dude wouldn't care about some N-word pass and say, "What's up, my what?" And they say it in the most goofiest of ways. Like I don't even have to attend that primary school at the time to know that it was so unnatural in the way they said it. And once the word is uttered, of course he gets offended by it and pressures them. And they always respond with, "Yo bro, it's just a word. It's just a word, bro." Cool. So if I just called your mom a stupid old little what, would that just be a word? Okay then, I thought so. But that's besides the point. He would also get hit with remarks like, "Oh, at least you're the good one, what?" Or, "At least you don't smell." Like it's just those backhanded compliments that do more harm than good. Man, when I was hearing this, I was just thinking to myself, if I ever had kids, they will 100% go to school that's mixed in backgrounds and ethnicities. As a result of that harrowing experience, he told me that he became hyper aware of himself, not in a confident way, but in a calculated way. Everything he did felt like it can reinforce a stereotype. The way he spoke, the music he liked, the way he reacted to things, he felt like he was representing more than himself. Even though no one explicitly said that. Think about that pressure for a second. At an age where most kids are trying to figure out who they are, he felt like he had to edit himself in broad time to avoid confirming assumptions people might already have. See, in my school, if you did not click with one group, you found another. You had options. That's unless if you are a socially inept individual with no friends back at school, like yours truly, but we move. If one space did not feel right, you moved. For him, there was no fallback group that shared his background. There was not one single group who just got it without explanation, so he was forced to kind of fit in with them. as he didn't want to be the lonely loser everyone in the whole school found strange and wanted him out. He thought to himself that maybe some kids will kind of add him to their social circle someday, and most kids in that school thought that he was the funniest guy in the school, so surely kids would add him to their group. And somehow they did add him. It kind of worked. The kids did include him in their social circle, but it was probably either out of pity or as a way for him to be the butt of the joke, or for other reasons, but nevertheless, they added my man to the group. Oh, he said that he was accepted in a general sense. He had friends. He was not completely isolated. But what he didn't realize at the time was after hanging out with those dudes, he would have been better off being the lonely loser people stare at. That idea would have probably been ice cream after that experience, and I'll tell you why. He told me that a lot of the time when he was hanging out with his friend group, they'll be saying some mad out-of-pocket jokes. You know, them kind of jokes that would have been better off not said at all. Yeah, those kind of jokes. They'll make those classic monkey jokes and ask if 100 men could defeat him, as they will tell him, "Oh, he's such a big and strong silverback." What? They will say, "Man, I wish I had your space, strength, and athleticism, dude." And when he would challenge those abhorrent remarks, they will say, "It's just dark humor, bro. If you're going to be a snowflake, don't hang out with us." So because he didn't want to seem as the snowflake, he would often laugh it off, as he didn't want to be seen as the guy who easily got offended by everything. Like, they knew what they'd done to him is evil. It disgusts me. They said how they truly felt about him and disguised it as jokes. It's an evil thing to do. Do you get what I'm trying to say? And you will also tell me about the teachers. And this is important because schools like to believe they are neutral spaces. He said most of the teachers were not openly biased, but subtle in their actions when teaching. For example, he would tell me teachers would often not pick him to answer the questions when he raised his hand up. Another example, one time he was walking the hallways and a teacher nearby called him, talking about, "Hey little man, I haven't seen you around here before. What's your name and where are you from, mate?" Then of course he answers with his name, and he's told him that he's based in Essex, as that's where he's from. Do you get what I'm trying to say? Then that silly man responds with, "No, where are you actually from, mate?" Bro, at that point he didn't even know how to answer that. So he just awkwardly walked off to his classroom while the teacher was giving some sinister ass smile. And classroom was a whole nother problem for him. He told me in class when he didn't do his homework or failed his classwork, the teacher will kinda expect it. But when he passes, it's kind of a surprise for them. Like as if he's not even capable of passing or something. Like what? Don't piss me off. Now let's compare that to my experience. If I did well, it was normal. If someone else did well, it was normal. No one was subconsciously measuring us against a stereotype baseline, at least not in an obvious way. You see, the environment matters more than people want to admit, but I digress. Another thing he spoke about was identity confusion. He said there were times where he changed how he spoke. He had to change the way he spoke, as he just wanted to fit in with them. He didn't want it to come off as the foreigner in the school he attended. It got to the point where he even had to change what music he was listening to. Man had to become a fan of Metallica, the Rolling Stones, Pink Floyd, and Arctic Monkeys. Then he once told me some guy tried to ask him on what music he listens to. He mentioned that he likes metal and rock, but they respond with, "But you're supposed to like rap music. This doesn't make any sense." And then there is the outside perception. When he left school and met more diverse groups, people assumed that he was different in a different way. They will say things like, "You don't sound like how I expected," or "You're not like other people from your background." So now he's in a position where he does not fully fit in the environment he grew up in, but he also gets questioned in spaces where people expect him to represent something else. That's what being the only one can do to you. It can leave you feeling like you're always slightly out of pace, no matter where you go. So let me tell you that my friend ain't angry about his experience. He reflects on it and understands it, but he also recognizes how much of himself was shaped by navigating that space. And hearing his story forced me to realize how much I took my environment for granted. I never had to think about representing my entire race. I never had to question whether a joke was about me or just a joke. I never had to decide between fitting in and being myself in that specific way. That is not something I earned, that is something I inherited through where I grew up. So if you're watching this and you grow up as the only one in your school, your experience is valid, even if you didn't lick your stream from the outside, and even if no one else acknowledges it. The small things count, mate. The real takeaway is not the guilt, it's the awareness. Because once you understand how environment shapes people, you start to see behavior differently. You start asking better questions. You start asking questions like, why does someone speak the way you do? Why do they react a certain way to certain jokes? Or why do they feel out of place in situations that seem normal to you? Most of the time, there's a story behind it. My friend's story is just one example, but it highlights something bigger. Being the only one is not just about numbers, it is about the perspective, and it's about how often you're reminded you're different and what that does to you over time. So the next time you hear someone say they were the only one in their school, do not reduce it to a fun fact. That is not a statistic, that is years of subtle pressure, quiet decisions, and identity shaping moments that most people don't even notice. And if you never had to think about any of this, that's not something to feel guilty about, but it's something to be aware of, because awareness is where bad conversations start. Now, this is the experience of being the only race at your school.